Hey everyone, welcome to a new video, welcome to my channel. My name is Maaike and today we are going to be talking about eyeshadow palettes again. Yes, that's right, I am going to be talking about my top 10 favorite eyeshadow palettes for a pale complexion like mine. So I just thought it would be fun to talk to you about those 10 favorite palettes of mine that I think are great for you if you are verging on like Snow White in terms of your skin tone. So that's what this video is going to be all about, so let's get started. Before we get to these palettes, I do want to point out that by no means does this mean that these palettes cannot be used by people with other skin tones, for sure. If you feel like these palettes are some of your favorites, then that's great, even if you have a much deeper complexion. However, these are the picks that I really like in terms of like still looking great on me and like neutral and everyday on my very fair skin tone. So I'm definitely someone who very often needs to look in like the fair range of foundation shades. It's gotten a lot better over the years, but very often I found that even if there was a lighter shade that I would then use, it would still be too dark. Like, I'm that kind of person. So in terms of shade inclusivity when it comes to base products, I have definitely also benefited from a lot of brands extending that by now, because very often a lot of foundations were just way too dark for me and they made me look very orange. So yeah, if you are someone who is very fair and have had that struggle in the past, then maybe you also recognize the struggle of finding eyeshadow palettes that don't look like you've got a bruise on your eye. Like, I'm not sure about you, but very often I found I was trying these very hyped up eyeshadow palettes and everything just turned out looking like a smoky eye on me. Case in point, Too Faced Chocolate Bar. I actually did a full video about that, so I'll make sure to link it in the eye above. So many people were loving it and hyping it up as like the perfect neutral palette, and I was like, it doesn't work as a neutral palette on me. For a smoky look, yes, but everything I get out of that is very sort of like nighttime. And so I thought I could do this video right now with my 10 favorite eyeshadow palettes that I feel still create a very nice neutral look for the daytime and that just work a lot better on you if you have a pale complexion. So these are definitely off the norm. I think I've got a few more affordable things. I also have some more expensive things in here. And I also have some palettes in here that have by now been discontinued. I know not everybody likes it if people talk about discontinued makeup products, but if I'm going to be talking about my personal favorites, I'm going to look in my collection and what I have. So that means that some of these things you may not be able to buy anymore. And I would like to start the video off with the eyeshadow palette that totally gave me this idea, and it's the Douce palette by Juvia's Place. This is not my most reached for Juvia's Place eyeshadow palette by any means. I go to Juvia's Place for the colors, for the greens, for the shimmers, for all of that lovely goodness. But it's good to know that Juvia's Place does an eyeshadow palette that is perfect if you have a lighter skin tone, because Juvia's Place is of course a Black-owned beauty brand, so of course a lot of their palettes were first catering to deeper skin tones than mine. Like, I mean, that's pretty obvious that they would do that. But it's great that they are, of course, including a palette like this. So what does the Douce look like? This is what the Douce looks like. And as you can see, there isn't a whole lot of depth, and there also isn't a lot of warmth in here. So I'm not saying that fair skin tones cannot be warm toned. You have plenty of people with fair skin tones with warm undertones. But if, for instance, if you have like a very fair skin tone like mine, then sometimes you're also verging more towards the neutral or cooler end of the spectrum. And then a palette like this is just great. The only real warm tone you get in here is this shade here. Everything else is quite cool toned. A shade like this, when you sheer it out on a fair skin tone, it's going to pop up a lot brighter than what you might expect. These three shimmers are absolutely lovely. I love how this features a dark, cool tone brown, because that is one of my favorite things to deepen things up with. Not a black, because it's way too dark for me, but a dark brown is usually where it's at for me. So I just feel that this palette does it all, and it also has a bit of a duochrome shimmer here with that white, which has like a pinky lavender kind of flip. I feel these shades go together really well. You get two really nice like creasy, transition-y kind of shades as well. This is such a great one for fair skin, and this palette just gave me this video idea. Now, a palette that I think is great for lots of different skin tones, but that I think can also work if you have fair skin, is the Tartelette in Bloom by Tarte. And the reason why I want to mention this is because this is such a foolproof, beginner-friendly eyeshadow palette. And I find that especially when I started doing makeup on this very fair skin, I struggled making things look good because it just wasn't really catering to what I needed. And I feel that this is the kind of palette that if you just leave out these really dark shades, you can make it go very fair. But these deeper tones here on the end, I'm blinding you, I'm very sorry. I'm blinding you again still. Let me see how I can hold this. I think this may be better. So yeah, because of these three darker shades, you can very easily also make it appropriate for much deeper skin tones for sure. But this is just the best basic eyeshadow palette. It has 3 shimmers, everything else is matte, and you get a warm toned look, a neutral look, and a cool toned look all in one palette. And if you really have no clue what to do, you can just use the way these are laid out and you've got a look. Like, you don't even have to think about it. So this is such a foolproof one that I always recommend this to almost anyone. If they ask me what's a great beginner eyeshadow palette, it would be this one. But I think it is especially nice for people with fair skin, provided you leave out some of these darker shades. I think this one can still work. And also this like more like cool toned one too. This is a bit gray toned. So these 2 really dark ones, if you leave that out, you've got something that's nice enough for what your needs are potentially. But yeah, this is just a great all-rounder, I feel. Shall we then talk about the ultimate fair-skinned eyeshadow palette that everybody gave so much slack? There was a couple of palettes in here that were not very popular on YouTube, but people gave it slack for it looking ashy on them. And I think that if you were to put this palette, I'm talking about the Too Faced White Chocolate Bar, what else? If you want to see this in action, I actually put it on my eyes last Sunday and I did my favorite look with it, so I'll make sure to link that video in the eye above. So yeah, this palette is my ultimate fair skin, cool tone lover's dream of a palette. It was limited edition, so you can no longer buy it. I got very lucky finding this for sale still in the Too Faced store in Carnaby Street at the time. So after this was released, and probably because it wasn't so popular, they still had plenty left at the time. But do you just see that this goes very light? It's very fair, and it's also more cool tone leaning, which is why then people with deeper and warmer skin tones are going to say it looks ashy. Well, yes, of course it's going to look ashy because it's not aimed at your skin tone. You're going to have to, you know, I sometimes see people do this who have darker skin tones, that they lay down a very light concealer kind of base and then set that with powder, and then they, you know, can make shadows pop a lot more. That's the technique you would have to do with this if you're any darker than me. But when I put this on, magic happens. I really, like, I have a go-to look that I do with this all the time, where I vary between doing all neutral, or where I put in some of these peaches, or the green, or the lavender on the lower lash line. But I always feature, what's it called again, sugared raisin, that always goes all over my lid. And I love using some of these mattes in this corner over here to just set up the look and do a very basic eye. The only 2 shades I never use are Banana Date and Glaze. Like those kind of beigey, kind of very light shades, I don't really use. Both of them are mattes. I would have preferred it if one of them had been a shimmer. Like if this shade here, Pearl Candy, would have been that, I would have been a lot happier. So I feel this palette does have its flaws, but this is just my favorite, like, fair skin friendly palette for sure. Shall we talk about something more affordable then again? And I wanted to show you the Lilac You A Lot by Colourpop. And the reason why I'm showing you this one is because I feel that in terms of purple, this is just the best purple palette that Colourpop has done. I like it much better than the It's My Pleasure because it's just a lot more like truer purpley kind of shades, but it's also very fair. It does have depth and a bit of brightness, so it's not just a bunch of like very light shades, but especially in this like shimmer range here, that is all quite fair. We do get a really nice like creasy, transition-y kind of stuff. It's just a wonderful, wonderful look. And if you do want to wear a bit of color, but you don't want it to be too kapow, like bright in your face, then I feel that this is a good one too. Slightly more affordable, yet sadly discontinued. I think you can only still buy this palette as part of a set. So you have to buy 3 chocolate bars, and then this one is going to be included. This is the Blanc Fusion by Zoeva, and I've said many times that this is like the fair girl friendly version of the Naked Honey by Urban Decay. I still love using that too. I mean, I do. But in here you get 5 mattes, 5 shimmers, really lovely. And especially in the matte range, it's quite light. This doesn't really go very deep at all. It's sort of like quite mid-toned, but you do get a little bit of depth and dimension to create more glam looks in this little corner over here. You do get a really nice like shimmering yellow, and this white shimmer has a like golden flip to it, so it's a duochrome. This is great for a yellow toned eye that doesn't go very yellow, but it's more neutral, and that also doesn't pull very mustard brown, which is what the Naked Honey does, in my opinion. This is just a really, really lovely neutral palette with a pop of yellow. And then a Zoeva palette that I think they've discontinued. They did a huge sale a few weeks ago, and so many of you have been saying that this is no longer available on the website. Maybe it's gonna come back. Maybe they do a restock around Black Friday. That's usually what Zoeva does, by the way. But it could also be that this has now been discontinued. It's the On Taupe. This is a very boring palette. Yeah, I'm usually not someone who loves very boring, very bland palettes. I want there to be a bit of depth and dimension. However, with this palette, I've always been very happy with it being very bland. However, I have heard lots of people say that they struggle making this look good on themselves because it is so fair, and because it is so light, and because all of these shades are like monochromatic taupey gray shades. It makes it, on a lot of people, this goes very muddy very quickly. On me, it's like neutral power to heaven. Like it's that great. This shade right here in the middle, perfect in the crease. I like deepening things up with this plummy shade. You get this interesting, well, it's like more like a matte with glitter, so the glitter doesn't really show up all that well, but this is a lovely shade for the lower lash line. I keep raving about these shades in the bottom here, which are duochromes, both of them. You don't really see it in the pan, you only see it when you swatch them. You get a good transition shade, you get a nice blend shade, you get this really interesting peachy golden flip kind of shade too, and then you just get 2 really stunning taupes. What's not to love? A fairly recent fair girl friendly find I did is this one, the Huda Beauty Mercury Retrograde. And this is a palette that came out for holiday last year, and I wasn't feeling it. I was like, oh, I don't really need that. And then over the springtime, I looked at this palette again and I was like, if I can still get that, I want to try it, because to me, these tones just scream spring summer. So this, for me, this palette was just released at the wrong time, for sure. Like, this is not a holiday palette, Huda, it just isn't. You get like a row of like rosy tone, kind of like mattes and shimmers, and then it's got a little bit more rosiness here, and then you get these like brighter pops along the top. However, what I found is that this palette works really well if you break it into 3 sextets. That's what it's called. So you get one that's like rosy plummy, and you get one that has like more of like a violet-y kind of vibe with some like warmth, and then this is neutral with a pop of turquoise and teal. Really stunning, really great palette, loved it. And save for these 3 shades, like if I cover, especially if I cover up these 2, do you just see that it's very fair? It just is. It's a bunch of mid-tones, lighter shades, and bright pops of color. So you do get something to deepen it up with, but I feel that you might really like this if you have a very fair complexion. Let's talk about another palette that that lots of people were giving slack when it was released. The Lime Crime Venus XL2. Again, this is going to blind you because it's super duper reflective packaging. And I definitely didn't get it at first because I was like, nah, so many people have been talking about this being a terrible palette, I'm not gonna get it. But I tried the Venus XL, the original bigger palette, and I really, really liked it. So I was like, oh, maybe this is good. And then of course there was a lot of people who were angry about this packaging being super bright and then the inside being nothing like it, which I don't really mind. If I knew that going into it when I was buying it, but I ended up deciding to get it when I saw it after spotting it in real life. You only really get like a little bit of warmth here with this shimmer and this like deeper bronze. Everything else is like rosy toned or like a very cool tone green. And for me, it just works wonders. And I found out that this pairs really well with the original XL as well, because of some of these rosy tones can very nicely mute some of the berry tones in that palette. So they kind of slot together, which I love too. The shimmers in here are lovely. I adored every single look I did with this palette, and so many people complimented me on the looks that I've done with this palette so far. It's just a staple by now. And then I've got two more left. And one thing I wanted to mention is the Norvina. I'm not sure if you can still get this. Of course, right now, at this moment, as we speak, is Anastasia still a thing? I think that after them just releasing palette after palette after palette last year, and some other shady stuff that I'm not entirely sure of what was going on, but all of a sudden, everybody stopped talking about the brand. And I was like, yeah, but I do still really like this. And the reason why I like this, because it's sort of like my high-end version for the Lilac Hue a lot, you could say. But this is a little bit more neutral. It has fewer purples. And I've said this many times before, but you need to cover up these two shades. I would have liked these to be more like purpley for sure, but these two are just not in play for me. And do you just see that if you cover up those two shades, that it's just a really nice light palette, very romantic, everyday. You get this really interesting like periwinkle kind of shade called Soul, which I love on the lower lash line. You get a full row of shimmers, a full row of mattes, and I really like Volatile, this gray here. That's for me like the deepest shade that I get in here. It goes really well with the neutrals, but also the purples, because it is a gray that has like a purpley undertone. Super interesting, very unique shade. Those are two of my favorites, as is Rose Gold, and I also really like just these four shimmers towards the end are just everything. So yeah, this is a really lovely palette. This is also the palette that made me fall in love with Anastasia eyeshadow quality. Everybody was going crazy for the Modern Renaissance, and I was like, yeah, I kind of like it. And then I bought this, and I wanted to own every single palette they did, but by now I definitely am no longer doing that, because they went a bit crazy over there. And then last but not least, this is the one you may have guessed. I always recommend the Lorac Pro 3. Why do I recommend it so highly? It was the first neutral palette to come out where I felt comfortable using every single shade in the palette. I've been pointing out a few palettes for you where I say, maybe just disregard these shades and then it might work for you. And I always felt that way about every single neutral palette that was on the market until this came out. Again, this palette got a lot of slack from a lot of people with medium warm tone skin tones, but if you are fair and you have a neutral to cool undertone, this just works so well. The black isn't super black. Truffle is really, really stunning. It's more like a cool tone brownie kind of shade. I'm not sure if you can see it, but I have this huge dent in Rose Bronze. I actually suspect I may be hitting pan on that when I set my mind to it. The same goes for Medallion and Light Pewter. Like, these three shades are my favorites. I also like Dark Mocha, and you get four, well, no, actually five, really, really nice crease shades and blendy shades. Especially Clay and Dark Brown I use so much. And then Terracotta is just that hint of warmth that you can just use to really make an eye look a lot more flattering if you don't like very cool toned looks. I can't rave about it enough, and Lorac is now available in Europe, so get it while you can. So there you have it. Those are my favorite 10 eyeshadow palettes that are great, that I would recommend if you have a fair skin tone. You may have to tweak some of them here and there. Some of these may be a little bit more difficult to find, but there are either other palettes on the market that do similar things or buy now, and I definitely want to like do an update with like palettes that have been sort of replaced, you could say. Maybe sometime in 2021 I can do that, but like discontinued palettes like the on Tope, like what would I recommend you get instead? Now you can't buy this anymore. I think that may be an interesting thing to do. So let me know in a comment down below what palettes you find very pale skin friendly. That would be lovely to know. And yeah, stay tuned because I make many more videos. I make 3 videos a week. So please give this video a thumbs up if you liked it, and I hope to see you in my next video. Bye-bye.